Hi, and good evening, and welcome to another edition of Versus. Yes, it's Versus here on Jay's All TV channel. This is episode 16 on September 16th, 2025. And of course, I'm your host and moderator, Jason DeCanio, ready to go on for another look at two very interesting sweet tooth companies. Oh, yeah, sweet tooth. And in fact, that last time we looked at Carvel versus Mr. Softy. That poll was still open for you to vote on. And if you're interested, go ahead and give us your opinion on which you prefer, Carvel ice cream or Mr. Softy ice cream. They're both soft serve, and I grew up with them, and I bet you grew up with them. And if you didn't and had it from some other different name, somehow you might have heard of those companies back in the day. Well, today or tonight, actually, we have another very interesting look at two different baking companies. You know, in our last season, we looked at many interesting companies like Pizza Hut versus Domino's, McDonald's versus Burger King, etc. And we also had, I think there was also Hershey's versus Reese's. That's another one we should be doing as well. But tonight, we're going to be looking at two baking companies, and they are full of history. And the ones we're going to be looking at are Hostess brand cakes, which actually was Interstate Bakeries back in the day. And then Drake's Cakes. Drake's Cakes is famous for devil dogs, funny bones, yodels. Hostess has the ring dings and the fruit pies. They both have fruit pies as well, too. We're going to look at both of those histories. And when we come back, we'll take a look at Hostess first. And then you get to vote at the end of the program on which one reigns supreme. So, Hostess Cakes coming up first on this edition of Versus right after these very important messages.
Every day's a sale day at Mays.
This spring, dress smart in fashions from Mays. Girls skirt sets with blazer and bow blouse or blazer and vest, only $15. And girls skirt and blazer sets with detailed stitching and suede elbow patches, just $11. Or three-piece pantsuits with two-button blazer and vest, only $15. This Thursday, Friday, and Saturday at Mays.
Every day's a sale day at Mays.
You know that Crazy Eddie has the largest selection and the guaranteed lowest prices. But there's a more important reason why you should only buy from Crazy Eddie. Crazy Eddie services everything he sells in his own factory-authorized, professionally staffed service centers. There's one in each Crazy Eddie store, completely equipped to handle any problem you might have with your stereo system, color TV, video recorder, or camera, or anything else you buy from Crazy Eddie. So remember, when you buy from Crazy Eddie, you buy with confidence, because Crazy Eddie is a lot more than just prices that are insane.
I'm a hairdresser in Ohio, but I'm a beachcomber in New York.
I love New York.
I'm a tugboat skipper in Nova Scotia, but I'm a wine sipper in New York.
I love New York.
New York is a summer wonderland. Call now for your free vacation guide and discover a whole new you.
I'm a star on Broadway, but in New York, I'm just part of the scenery. I love New York.
Now you can ride the rainbow to Trump's Castle Hotel and Casino on the Marina in Atlantic City. And you know what's waiting at the end of the rainbow.
It's the night of thrills, Wednesday night. The 200-mile-an-hour plane-belching Shockwave Peterbilt. Wild 250-mile-an-hour funny cars. Coca-Cola Cavalier. Black Magic. Hawaiian Punch. The USA 1 Corvette. The Night-Rated Chevy Rebellion wheelie cars at 140 miles an hour. Jet funny cars at 260 miles an hour. See the wild burnout contest. Plus the Masters of Disaster flaming 20-car jump with no landing ramp. It's the night of thrills. Wednesday night at 8 o'clock. At Old Bridge Township Raceway Park, 2 miles north of Englishtown, New Jersey. Get there early because it's going to be insane.
The company has its roots in Navziger Bakeries, Interstate Bakeries and Interstate Brands, also known as Hostess, founded by Ralph Lursey Navziger in a church basement at 6th and Prospect Avenue in Kansas City back in 1905. Well, Nafziger expanded the bakeries and bought out competitors. And in 1925, he sold Nafziger to Purity Bakeries, which became American Bakeries, and acquired a controlling interest in Schultz Baking Company and its butternut breads brand. Then in 1930, Nafziger announced the formation of the Interstate Bakeries Corporation, or the IBC, with the merger of Schultz Bakery and the 7 bakers of Western Bakeries of Los Angeles to become the 5th largest baker in the United States. Notice we're having a lot of repetition in bakeries and baker. The company sold butternut bread wrapped in gingham to grocery stores. Schultz and Western continued to operate separately under the Interstate umbrella until 1937, when they merged with Interstate Bakeries. In 1943, Interstate acquired the Supreme Baking Company of Los Angeles, and then in 1950, it bought the O'Rourke Baking Company of Buffalo, New York. Acquisitions during the 50s and the early 60s included the Ambrosia, Ramar, Buttercream, Campbell Cell, and Shaw Tasting Baking Company, the Kingston Cake and Cobb's Sunlit Bakeries, Sweetheart Bread Company, and Hart's Bakeries. In the late 60s, IBC acquired Millbrook Bread, Schwano Farms, and the Baker and Schwano Canning Companies. In 69, they changed its name to Interstate Brands, with its signature brands Butternut Blue Seal breads and Dolly Madison cakes and butternut breads had been in business since 1902. I get the feeling that they just couldn't decide on a permanent name. They always kept changing their name or buying out some other company to try to just become more popular. Well, then in 1975, Interstate was acquired by the Data Processing Financial and General Corporation, or the DPF, a computer leasing company that encountered difficulties during the IBM antitrust battles, which changed the pricing of IBM hardware. To change its business model, DPF used its cash to buy a low-tech company, and they merged the company, the headquarters in Hartsdale, New York. They kept the DFP acronym while continuing to divest its remaining technology assets. And investing heavily in its plants, it acquired the Silver Loaf Baking Company, Eddie Bakeries, and Mrs. Cubison's Foods. Wow. And then in 81, as if they were not finished yet, DPF completed the sale of its remaining computer systems and changed the company's name back to the original Interstate Bakeries. So we're back to square one again, moving its headquarters back to Kansas City. Then in 86, Interstate acquired Purity Baking Company and Stewart Sandwiches, followed in 1987 by Lancashire Food Products. The following year, Interstate became a privately held company, and its name changed to IBC Holdings. IBC bought the Merida Cotton's Bakeries division of the American Bakeries Company. In 1991, IBC again became a public company and changed its name back to Interstate Bakeries. Then in 95 of January, Interstate acquired the Continental Baking Company from Walston Purina for $330 million at 16.9 million shares of Interstate stock. Continental had acquired Taggart Bakeries of Indianapolis in 25, and the deal brought Taggart's creations, including Wonder Bread and the Hostess brand. We finally get to the Hostess name, to Interstate. Taggart had created Hostess in 1921, and the brand focused on cakes like Twinkies, cupcakes, ding-dongs, and ho-hos, created during Continental's ownership. And at this time, the merged company also bought the San Francisco French Bread Company, John J. Nissim Baking Company, Drake's, and My Bread Company. Wow. With the merger, Interstate held 2 national bread divisions, Butternut and Wonder Bread. The divisions had different cultures. Butternut was unregimented, with each bakery a self-contained profit center, and Wonder Bread was structured. This caused early problems. In both divisions, snack cakes were more profitable due to economy of scale and logistics. When extended shelf life enzymes were developed for bread, it was hoped to convert small, less efficient bakeries into a network of large bakeries like their snack cakes operations. Well, the new enzymes gave the bread a different taste and texture, and the market forces reduced prices and sales. Then on September 22nd of 2004, Interstate Bakeries filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. The company named a new chief executive, Tony Alvarez. Interstate Bakeries stock, which had been $34 per share, fell to $2.05 with the bankruptcy. And during the bankruptcy proceedings at the time, the longest running in U.S. history, Interstate fought a 2007 bid from Mexican baker Grupo Bimbo and Ron Burkle of the Yucaipe companies, or Yucaipe. Wow, Yucaipe companies. Interesting names for Mexican bakeries. Under Craig Jung, the Interstate Bakeries emerged from bankruptcy as a private company on February 3rd of 2009, and the plan included a 50% equity stake by Ripplewood Holdings and credit lines from General Electric Capital and GE Capital Markets. Don't you just love the history? Wow. They also went for Silver Point Finance and Monarch Master Funding. They unionized workers. They made contract concessions in exchange for equity in the company. And from 2004 to 2009 bankruptcy period, Interstate closed 9 of its 54 bakeries and more than 300 outlet stores. And its workforce declined from 32,000 to 22,000. The company dropped regional brands and operating agreements, such as an agreement to produce Sunbeam bread for the northeastern United States. Then on November 2nd, 2009, IBC became Hostess Brands, named for its Twinkies and cupcakes and cake divisions. Hostess Brands continued its bread lines, including Wonder Bread. The company's subsidiaries, such as Interstate Brands Corporation and IBC Sales Corporation, continued displaying their name and logo on Hostess Brands products. So all the time that we've been eating Hostess cakes or consuming them in such ways, no one ever bothered to look at the actual other logos on the box. We just cared about the Hostess logo. Wow. Then in December of 2011, it was reported that Hostess Brands was on the verge of filing for bankruptcy a second time. The company stopped paying future pensions benefits after August, breaking its union contracts. According to a Hostess employee, we understand that should we pursue some form of legal action to require the company to live up to the terms of the contract, they may close, but we have come to believe that they will close anyway. We believe the company is poorly managed, and the only hope is a complete change in management. Well, January 10th, 2012, Hostess Brands once again filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy for the second time. And in its filing, the company said it is not competitive, primarily due to legacy pension and medical benefit obligations and restrictive work rules. And according to Hostess, it employed 19,000 people and was more than $860 million in debt. The company said it would continue to operate with $75 million of debtor in possession financing from Monarch Alternative Capital, Silver Point Capital, and other investors. Then in March, Brian Driscoll resigned as CEO and was replaced by Gregory F. Rayburn, who had been hired as Chief Restructuring Officer 9 days earlier. Fortune reported that unions in the company were unhappy with Driscoll's proposed compensation package of $1.5 million plus cash incentives and $1.95 million in long-term compensation. The court had discovered that Hostess executives received raises of up to 80% the previous year, and Rayburn cut the salaries of the 4 top Hostess executives to $1 to be restored by January 1st of the following year or earlier. Now go to July 2012. The New York Post reported that negotiations with the Teamsters Union, led by Silver Point Capital, were close to an agreement allowing Hostess Brands to cut employee pay and benefits if the company continued funding its pension plans. In May, as required by the Worker Adjustment and Retraining Notification Act, the company's 19,000 workers were warned of a possible layoff. In an email to Marysville, California, Appeal Democrat Hostess spokesman Eric Halverson wrote that the May notices were to alert employees to a possible sale of the company, but our goal was still to emerge from bankruptcy as a growing company with a strong future. And although the layoff notices listed July 7th to 21 as dates On July 5th, another company spokesman told the Financial News and Daily Record that there were no immediate plans to lay off Hostess employees. Then, in November of the same year, Hostess employees nationwide went on strike. The Bakery, Confectionery, Tobacco Workers, and Grain Millers International Union, representing the 6,600 Hostess employees, took action after a contract proposal from Hostess Brands and was rejected by 92% of its members. November 16th, Hostess announced that it was ceasing its plant operations, laying off most of its 18,500 employees. Who doesn't lay off employees in their company? The company said that it intended to sell off its assets, including its well-known brands, and liquidate. And according to CEO Gregory Rayburn, Hostess Brands will move promptly to lay off most of its 18,500 member workforce and focus on selling its assets to the highest bidders. Wow. I'm not going to continue on with this. I think with bankruptcies and liquidations, you get the idea how many times they did this. So what about Hostess in its own right? What about all the great food? Well, to summarize and sum it up, if you've eaten Hostess in the past, then you have great memories of what you consumed. And it's interesting to note that the rest of this history of its suppliers, basically, I would say, you got to look at it this way. If Hostess was back then a popular cake, no wonder why it died so quickly and why Twinkies went off the charts and got restructured. Who knows? Anyways, there's Hostess in a nutshell for you. I never thought for once I'd actually have to do a history of a company that decided to basically go this route instead of, But then again, yeah, I think the only Hostess item I buy is the chocolate cupcakes with the 7 squiggles. Yeah, that's the popular one there, Emu, I must say. But even at that rate, I think I used to buy the fruit pies, maybe like the apple and possibly the cherry pies. Twinkies were okay. I think everybody consumed a Twinkie once in their lifetime, especially a deep fried Twinkie. But it's interesting to note the history of where they came from. But we're going to have a better history with Drake's, I hope. When we come back, we'll look at Drake's Cakes and their illustrious history, and then you get to vote on who has the better story, history-wise, not so much product-wise. We'll be back with a look at Drake's Cakes right after this.
You dirty dog, bringing home fleas, but they'll be gone with Deacon Forgone. Forgone kills more than roaches, wipes out 17 kinds of bugs, including fleas. Kills fleas in carpets, furniture, and drapes. Cause Forgone is an automatic room fogger with Deacon power. Wipes out fleas in the whole room. Come back, no bad smell, and no sticky mess. Deacon Forgone, more power to you.
In Deutschland backen wir Strudel, aber in Amerika Pillsbury Toasterstrudel, Strudel zum Toasten. Oh, 16 Lagen Blätterteig mit saftiger, fruchtiger Füllung, fantastischer Glasur. Ist es auch gut? So was habe ich noch nie getoastet. Oh.
Pillsbury Toaster Strudel in your grocer's freezer.
You never toasted anything like it.
Bring it home, Dr. King.
Proud enough, strong enough, tough enough, loud enough. We're putting our hands together, making our best get better. Bring it home, let's bring it home, bring it home.
Flying high, swinging hot. Come on, guys, let's all we got. Putting ourselves into it. Together we can do it. Bring it home, let's bring it home, bring it home.
This is the year you're gonna see baseball like it ought to be. Ready, set, here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4,
Friday night at 7:30. It's the Mets and the Giants. Don't miss it.
Bring it home. She was coming home to the jungle and to their wild, untamed love for butter, cut down by cholesterol. Until...
Darling, look what I've brought back.
I can't believe it's not butter.
It's the premier spread flavored with real sweet cream buttermilk for a fresh butter taste, but without the cholesterol.
How civilized.
I can't believe it's not butter. The taste you love without the cholesterol.
All right, Drake's Cakes in all of its glory. Let's get to this history. Maybe it'll be a little bit better than Hostess. Well, they began as the N.E. Drake Baking Company, incorporated on November 14th, 1896 in New York City. So they are a true New York company and founded by Newman E. Drake. The first bakery was in Harlem at 3638 West 135th Street. Drake's youngest brother, Judson, was working with him at the founding, and his brother Charles was with him in the later business in Brooklyn. Judson left the business in 1898 for the National Biscuit Company, where he had a long and well-regarded career in bakery management. Charles was a vice president for the Brooklyn business, but he sold his interest and retired in 1907. And at some point, all four of Newman's sons worked in the business. Newman Drake came into this entrepreneurial venture with experience in large-scale commercial baking. In 1888, he joined Vanderveer and Holmes Biscuit Company, and he had become a salesman traveling internationally for this cracker business by 1894. He was traveling in England on business from 1893 to 1894, and when he observed commercially baked fine cakes sold in grocery stores, and he was inspired to bring the idea to America. By March of 1898, retailer ads featured Drake's pound cakes by brand name in various flavors. The ads stated that the products were baked fresh daily and sold for 17 cents per pound. In 1900, retailer ads featured Drake's layer cakes with chocolate or vanilla icing at 18 cents. One Drake's ad touted that the price was half of what it would cost to make at home. By 1901, retailer ads referred to Drake's celebrated pound cakes and included Drake's macaroons. The 1890s, the cracker industry consolidated in a multi-tiered fashion. In 1898, the three major players consolidated into one large enterprise, the National Biscuit Company, later known as Nabisco. Now, as early as 1899, but definitely by November of 1900, the National Biscuit Company had purchased the Drake Bakery and referred to the bakery as the N.E. Drake Baking Company branch. Retailer ads show that the N.E. Drake's famous loaf cakes continued to sell under the brand name at least to December 30th of 1902. The Drake's Baking Company was dissolved in 1903. However, National Biscuit Company continued to produce cakes and macaroons at the same Harlem bakery at least into 1908, but the products were under brand names other than Drake, for example, Regina, Golden Glory, and Imperial. It is not known how Newman Drake was able to hold on to the Drake brand for later Drake Baking Enterprises, but National Biscuit Company moved on to other brand names. December 4th, 1902, Drake reestablished his business as Drake Brothers Company with his brother Charles and his brother-in-law Frank S. Vreeland. And by at least May 10th of 1903, Drake was operating a bakery at 1006 Wallabout Market in Brooklyn, New York. Newman was president, his brother Charles was vice president, and sons John Harold and Walter were bakers. And by 1904, Newman's third son, Arthur, was working in the business as a salesman. An article covering a Brooklyn food show in April of 1904 indicated that Drake continued to produce pound cakes, macaroons, and other cakes at the Brooklyn bakery. The firm was noted as having been the first to have produced cakes in large quantities for grocery stores, which must reference the origins of the Harlem bakery. The new bakery was servicing over 1,000 stores in Brooklyn and extended over a large portion of surrounding country. Then in 1904, the Drake brothers began sales recognition dinners that became grand affairs with speakers, guests, and monetary awards recognizing sales performance. A photograph of the 14th annual dinner in 1917 captures the grandeur of the event held at Silsby and Son Oyster Bar and Chop House in Manhattan, which was established in 1863. With attendees in suits, custom menus on the tables, tuxedoed waitstaff, and lavish decor. Then in 1905, Drake opened a bakery in Boston's Roxbury neighborhood at 8385 Savin Street with J. Harold Drake, Newman's son, as manager. The Wallabout Market Bakery expanded in 1909 with the addition into 1704 to 1705 Wallabout Market and the addition of a 16-foot oven. Also in 1909, Drake's commissioned Drake's Cakewalk, sheet music for a rag or ragtime music for piano. Then in 1910, Newman Vanderveer Drake, Newman E. Drake's youngest son, joined the firm in Wallabout Market. To May of 1913, Drake Brothers announced that they would build a new 5-story bakery built of brick and concrete on Clinton Avenue in Brooklyn on a lot 80 by 125 feet. The ovens were on the top floor to allow the heat to escape. Mixing was on the 4th floor. Packing was on the 3rd floor, offices on the 2nd, and shipping and receiving on the ground level, as seen in photographs of the facility. The facility had a laundry to clean the white uniforms, and there was a rooftop garden that served as a break area. Excuse me. Drake Brothers was recognized in a leading advertising magazine of the day for branding and advertising efforts. With much of the products sold by the pound, the products were vulnerable to substitution by retailers. Drake implemented pan liners that were perforated with the Drake's brand name so that the product could be identified by the end consumer. And Drake's advertised this feature. They also made use of the trademark on trucks, advertising, and everything that leaves our bakery. A white brand 3-ton truck in the small fleet at the Drake's Boston Bakery was featured in a trucking publication in 1914 for having operated for 14 months without a loss of a day. In 1920 and again in 1927, Drake's added garages to store their fleet of vehicles just down the street from the bakery at 3537 Clinton Avenue and 4143 Clinton Avenue. Then in the early 1900s, Newman Drake was looking for something new and different to grace the door of his delivery trucks. Joseph Gross, a German immigrant who came to the U.S. in 1898 and worked as stripper painting lines and designs on horse wagons and automobiles, drew the original Drake's logo, which consisted of a duck with a chef's hat holding a tray of cakes. Drake was so pleased with the design that Gross received a bonus in the amount of $500 for his work. Then on July 29th, 1924, a new corporation was formed as Drake Bakeries Incorporated. Ralph Ward became president of the company. He was the grandson of the founder of Ward Baking, a major bakery enterprise founded in 1849 that went on to become Continental Baking and introduce the Hostess brand, develop competitive products like Twinkies, and eventually, after transitioning to Interstate Bakeries Corporation, owned the Drake's brand in 1998, 74 years later, after having made an unsuccessful attempt to gain the Drake's brand in 1986. Well, golly, wouldn't you know? They all tried to compete with each other, and then they wind up trying to take over each other. Wow. If at first you don't succeed, and if you can't beat them, join them, right? I always say, if you're going to do it the right way, and just try to merge with them. Well, the preferred shares of Drake Bakeries Incorporated were owned by Bessemer Investment Company. The investment arm of the Bessemer Trust which was founded in 1907 by Henry Phipps from proceeds from the sale of Carnegie Steel, which Phipps founded with Andrew Carnegie. Newman E. Drake and other Drake family members, Ralph Ward and other Ward family investments, B.B. Vanderveer, and others were among the closely held group of common stockholders of Drake Bakeries. To 1925, they advertised with full-page ads, a new freshness policy where they would remove products from store shelves after 48 hours. The ad also featured recipes for 3 Drake's products, highlighting to readers the wholesome ingredients used and how much easier it would be to buy the same product you would make at home from Drake. The ad also introduced the products in cartons, termed the Fresh Cake Package. In 1925, they began a series of collectible cards, including 2 featuring Babe Ruth, and these cards had brand information on the back. Drake's baseball cards continued for decades. The same year, in 1925, work began on a new 3-story bakery in Irvington, New Jersey, near Newark. One of the top sellers for Drake's still today, Devil Dogs. Yes, was filed for trademark protection in 1926 and shown as first sold in commerce on June 15th of 1926. The owner of the trademark was S. Gumpert Company, Inc. of Brooklyn. Yankee Doodles, a chocolate cupcake with cream filling and no icing. That makes the difference between the Hostess cupcake and the Drake's cupcake. There's a difference. They was first sold in interstate commerce in 1928 by the Yankee Cake Corporation of Providence, Rhode Island. And the firm built a bakery around that time at 24 Althea Street in Providence. To 1936, Drake's was running ads for Yankee Doodles under the Drake's brand. And around 37, the bakeries were sharing the building with the Yankee Cake Company and later became sole occupant. The old formula book of Drake bakeries from the late 30s to the early 40s references the Providence Bakery, and the Yankee Cake Company was stated as a wholly owned subsidiary of Drake Bakeries in a 1941 article. To August 28, 1928, Drake was purchased by acquisition of common stock by Central Distributors, Inc. Central Distributors was formed March 9th of 1928 by Ralph Ward, his cousin William Ward, and Benjamin Titman as a holding company for food companies. Drake common shareholders received shares in Central Distributors, Inc. Newman E. Drake and Ralph Ward were signatories of documents related to the purchase, etc., etc. And less than a year later, on August 8th of 1929, the Borden Company purchased Central Distributors, Inc. for Borden stock, gaining control of Drake Bakeries, as it was a company held within Central Distributors, Inc. Wow, talk about getting tongue-tied. Ralph Ward became a vice president with the Borden Company in October of 1931, while continuing to serve as president of Drake Bakeries, Inc. without interruption. And then in 1929, Drake begins advertising that the products are wrapped in cellophane, noting that shoppers could see what they were buying and that it was a flavor-sealed package. To the 30s and 40s, they go with the coffee cakes, which is another popular one, to the 1939 World's Fair. Then, at the end of 1949, Drake Bakeries had a bakery at 2130 44th Avenue in Long Island City. Let's see. The Ring Dings, they launched in 1958 of January. Funny Bones, my favorite, April 12th, 1961. Devil Dogs were first owned by another company, and they're marketed in advertisements under the Drake's brand in 1956. Drake Bakeries had a case heard in front of the United States Supreme Court, April 62. The Yodels launched on August 15th of 1962. The Fruit Doodles, trademark name for fruit pies, were introduced October 29, 1964, but were known as Drake's fruit pies by the early 70s. Then another bakery in Wayne, New Jersey, was built to supplement the existing bakeries in Brooklyn, Boston, Long Island City, and Newark in 69. To the 80s and 90s. In 81, they brought back and they conducted a contest to name the duck mascot. Webster was selected. The name was the selected name. So it's Webster the Duck. Interesting. So all of the products that basically came out in the 60s, and they've held their own. As you can see as we scroll down, well, a lot has changed over that course. And I would say, to be honest with you, when the voting comes in, I myself am going to actually be voting for Drake's Corporation. Because you know why? Not only did they keep their name as much as they possibly could, and they have better products. That's just my opinion. I believe that if they stuck with what they had, and they did, that's why they have been very popular. But they, of course, competing with Hostess is one thing, and trying to get around is the other thing. So that's going to wrap it up for this edition of Versus. And I can honestly say, with all said and due respect, I know who I'm voting for. The question is, who would you be voting for when we put up that poll? Join us next time for another edition of Versus, where we look at two more great companies or products. And if you have a product or you have two companies that you would like us to contrast, please drop us the line in the on the channel, and definitely let us know what you would like to see being contrasted. Till then, I'm Jason Icanio. Remember to be honest, be real, and keep it simple, stupid. Yes. Have a good night, and we'll see you Thursday. Bye for now.